All right, hello friends. We are moving along in the book of Luke. Luke chapter 23. Jesus has been taken hostage, shall we say. He is going through the brutal process of torture, beatings, mockings, floggings, leading up to the crucifixion, where they do everything in their power to kill him. But you can't kill God. But when the time had come, Jesus gave up his spirit. But the grave couldn't hold him. But I'm not going to give the story away to you. I'm going to let you got to follow along. Okay, then I'll tell you how it ends. Luke chapter 23. And the whole multitude of them arose and led him unto Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, We found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ a king. Jesus didn't forbid anybody to give tribute to Caesar. That was a lie. But when liars are in a mob, there's nobody standing up for what's right. And the one or two people that did, they were pushed aside immediately because they had a plan, and it wasn't a good one. Verse 3, Pilate asked him, saying, Art thou the king of the Jews? And he answered him and said, Thou sayest it. Then said Pilate to the chief priests and to the people, I find no fault in this man. And they were the more fierce, saying, He stirred up the people, teaching throughout all Jewry, beginning from Galilee to this place. When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked whether the man were a Galilean. And as soon as he knew that he belonged unto Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who himself also was in Jerusalem at that time. Now, maybe Herod came to celebrate the Passover. Herod had some Jewish lineage in him, not much. He was at least acquainted with Jewish customs. Perhaps he wanted to be in the Passover for all the excitement. Like when there's a big parade or a festival, people like to show up and get involved. Perhaps Herod was there for this. We don't know. But for whatever reason, Herod had the opportunity to release him. But he didn't. And when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceedingly glad in his heart, exceedingly glad in his face, exceedingly glad in his mind. He was happy for the moment to see this great man whom he had heard so much about. For he was desirous to see him of a long season, because he had heard many things of him, and he hoped to have seen some miracle done by him. He was hoping for Fowler's Auber, a cheap trick. But God is kind, Fowler's Auber. God is not a cheap trick. What he does is for real, to mean something for somebody for real, not a trick. Then he questioned with him in many words, but he answered him nothing. And the chief priests and scribes stood and vehemently accused him. And Herod, with his men of war, set him at naught, and mocked him, and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe, and sent him again to Pilate. Back to Pilate's court, like tennis. Boop, 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 boop. And neither one really wanted to deal with the ball, this huge tennis ball of eternal consequences landing in your court, and they don't really want to deal with it. They don't want to step on the plate and swing the bat. Eventually, Pilate does. Herod refused, and later on, we will find out what happened to Herod later on. When you go through the book of Acts, you'll see that Herod had nice little wiggly worms in his tummies that devoured his body because he pretended to be something special from God. Pilate, I am certain that his fate and his ending was also not very pleasant. The same day, Pilate and Herod were made friends together, for before them they were at enmity between themselves. And Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said unto them, Ye have brought this man unto me as one that perverteth the people, and behold, I have examined him before you, have found no fault in this man touching those things whereof you accuse him. Isn't that interesting? The evil man makes friends over somebody else's hurt. Not long ago, there was riots in here caused by a man who had been shot by a governmental authority. This man had previously made friends with another man as they beat and accosted an elderly gentleman to steal his backpack and his wallet and so forth, just for the sheer joy of beating up an old guy that couldn't defend himself. And they were buddies, they were friends, they had a good time, they made a video of it. It was so cool, they were friends. But eventually this guy used that same type of accostement against a governmental authority, cost him his life. Cheap friendship with another hoodlum didn't do him much good then. Pilate and Herod's friendship didn't do them much good either. No, nor yet Herod, for I sent you to him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore chastise him and release him. For of necessity he must release one unto them at the feast. So he's got a little plan. He's hoping to get off that he don't have to make the final decision of an innocent man being killed. He didn't want to make the decision, but he's going to be forced to make the decision. They cried out all at once, saying, Away with this man, and release unto us Barabbas. His jaw probably hit the ground. Who for a certain sedition made in the city and for murder was cast into prison. He deserved to die, and yet he's going to be set free. That the Prince of Peace would be killed on a cross. Pilate, therefore, willing to release Jesus, spake again to the crowd. But they cried, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. And he said unto them the third time, Why, what evil hath he done? I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. He wants to just let him go. He wants to get off the hook here. And they were instant with loud voices, requiring that he might be crucified. And the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed. That was a situation where Pilate, he couldn't lead, so he had to obey. Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. So Pilate gave up his leadership that day, and he had to obey the pressure of the crowds and the mob and the multitude. If you can't lead, you must obey. And he released unto them him that for sedition and murder was cast into prison, whom they had desired, but he delivered Jesus to their will. And as they led him away, they laid hold upon one Simon, a Cyrenian, coming out of the country, and on him they laid the cross that he might bear it for Jesus Christ. And there followed him a great company of people and of women, which also bewailed and lamented him. But Jesus, turning into them, saying, as he spins around, he says into them, into their crowd, okay, you're going to weep for me? This is what Jesus tells them. Jesus speaks to the daughters of Jerusalem. Daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming in which they shall say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bare, and the paps which never gave suck. Then shall they begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, cover us. For if they do these things in a green tree, what shall be done in the dry? Israel had a great luxurious lifestyle. They had the protection and the militia of the Romans, providing for their nation security and armaments. They didn't even have to have their own army. The Rome was doing it for them. They lived good. They lived good. And Jesus said, you do this in the green tree, wait till the dry tree comes. And there were two other malefactors led with him to be put to death. And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, there they crucified him and the malefactors, one on the right hand and the other on the left. Then said Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they parted his raiment and cast lots for them. And the people stood beholding, and the rulers also, they derided him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself. If he is the Christ, the chosen of God. And the soldiers also mocked him, coming to him, offering him vinegar, and saying, If thou be the King of the Jews, save thyself. And a superscription also was written over him in letters of Greek and Latin and Hebrew. This is the King of the Jews. That was a prophetic sign, friends. However they meant it, we don't know. It said Pilate put it up there, and he said, What I have written is what I have written. And I believe Pilate knew, deep down his heart, he knew. This was the King of the Jews. In 3 languages, so it could not be mistaken, Greek, Latin, and Hebrew. That'd be an awesome sign to have. If it was possible to have that little wooden sign, that would be awesome to have. That'd be priceless to have that. And one of the malefactors which were hanged railed on him, saying, If thou be the Christ, save thyself and us. But the other answering rebuked him, saying, Dost not thou fear God, seeing thou art in the same condemnation as I? And we indeed justly, for we receive the just and due reward of our deeds. But this man hath done nothing. And he said unto Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest in thy kingdom. Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, today thou shalt be with me in paradise. You want to be free of your sin? Do what the thief on the cross did. He admitted his guilt. Yes, I deserve whatever punishment I get in this life. Number 2, I want forgiveness. Number 3, he acknowledged Jesus Christ as the Son of God and being innocent. And said, Lord, remember me when you come in your kingdom. Jesus said, today, you're going to be with me down there in paradise. In the paradise God has prepared for man until they get to heaven. In the center of the earth, in the spiritual center of the earth, there is an inferno of suffering, and then there is paradise. Abraham's bosom, some people call it, but it is paradise. It is luxurious. Samuel was there, prophets, the saints. It is a holding place, a temporary holding place, until Jesus, being the first resurrection into the heavens, because he had to be first and most important. And he said to that thief on the cross, you're going to be with me in the paradise today, because Jesus wasn't resurrected till 3 days later. So it wasn't in heaven. It was in the paradise in the center of the earth, because there was a paradise and there was also a hell. So don't mistake that. He didn't go up to heaven, because that didn't happen until after he resurrected from the dead and spent time with the disciples, and then he ascended into the heavens. Jesus was then into the heavens. And it was about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour. And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was rent in the midst. So, torn in two. Once again, I'll make this little statement. I can't really support it, but we don't really know that the Ark of the Covenant was there. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but we really don't know. Okay. But they went through, I believe they went through the rituals, whether the Ark of the Covenant was there or not. And the Ark, that place, that room they had for the Ark, and the curtain was torn in two. Now, I've said before, I didn't think that they had the Ark anymore after the Egyptians came in and they ransacked Jerusalem when Rehoboam became king, but we don't really know because it was like silent. Okay. But it could have been there. You know, I would retrace my steps and say, well, I don't think so, but maybe it was. But the point being is they had this area which was super duper holy for them, and they had a curtain around it. But when Jesus was on the cross and gave himself up, the curtain was ripped in two, so all men can enter the holy place. Whether the Ark of the Covenant was there or not, that was their, quote, holy area. And it was about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour. And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was rent in the midst. And when Jesus had cried with a loud voice, he said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And having said thus, he gave up his spirit. Now when the centurion saw what was done, he glorified God, saying, Certainly this was a righteous man. And all the people that came together to that sight, beholding the things which were done, smote their breasts and returned. Sometimes when the wicked man gets his way, he's not too happy about it because there's guilt consequences. And all his acquaintances and the women that followed him from Galilee stood afar off, beholding these things. And behold, there was a man named Joseph, a counselor, and he was a good man and a just man. The same had not consented to the counsel and deed of them. He was of Arimathea, a city of the Jews, who also himself waited for the kingdom of God. This man went unto Pilate and begged the body of Jesus, and he took it down and wrapped it in linen and laid it in a sepulchre that was hewn in stone, wherein never man was laid. And that day was the preparation day, and the Sabbath drew on. And the women also, which came with him from Galilee, followed after, and beheld the sepulchre and how his body was laid. And they returned and prepared spices and ointments, and rested the Sabbath day according to the commandment. Now, they had probably 2 Sabbaths that week. One was for the Passover, and one was for their weekly Sabbath. And Jesus was probably crucified on a Thursday. That would take it from Thursday to Friday, Friday to Saturday, Saturday, Sunday, the third day, rising on the first day of the week, that is Sunday, and that's why most New Testament Christians celebrate the Sabbath day of rest and have church on Sunday and so forth. And it's a good practice and a good principle. And so probably he was crucified on Thursday, and they would have then had 2 Sabbaths that week, because it was a Passover Sabbath that would have fallen on Friday. And then they would have had their Saturday, which was their regular Sabbath, and then the Sunday then it would have been the third day. So anyway, interesting conjecture. You know, obviously I wasn't there, you weren't there, and of course historical records are somewhat patchy. But the point being is he was crucified, and Jesus said 3 days and 3 nights, and on the third day he rose again. So that would put it on Thursday. Nonetheless, we celebrate Good Friday. I don't know why, but we all celebrate it, you know, and it's fine, you know. But I celebrate the resurrection every day. I celebrate Jesus every day. It's just that I don't get to rest every day on the Sabbath. And so for me, I choose to rest on Sunday to the best of my ability. And what you do is between you and God. So from the Bears, Tim, God bless you. Until next time, we'll see you, friend.